Good afternoon, Megan Cronin. Good to see you today.
Good to see you, Mikey.
I don't have the exact number of which field note this is. It's somewhere more than 1,000. But today we're talking about positive and negative frames for justifying a major change. So more about communication, organizational communication. But of course, great leaders are great communicators. And so there's a big overlap here that it's not just about communication that we're talking about. We're almost always talking about leadership. Anything specifically come to mind on this subject about explaining the problem when you first read it?
Well, I think what was most interesting for me after reading this particular note was that this is one of those notes where you read it and go, well, of course, that makes total sense. Why am I not already doing that? And the reality is most of us don't put that much thought behind our communication. We put it behind announcing major change. A lot of times we justify the change. We talk about the perceived outcomes. We talk about the teams and what's needed, et cetera. We talk about all these things, but do we ever really think about the frame that we're using and whether it's coming from a positive place or negative? Highly unlikely. So this was one of those, I read it and go, yeah, we all should be doing this, but most of us probably aren't.
Yeah, and that's so true with many of the admired leadership behaviors that we have listed in our platform, is that they are simple, they're universal. When you hear them for the first time, you say, oh yeah, I've done that a time or two. And it's pointed out to us as like, oh yeah, from a strictly scientific point of view, this is something you should be practicing all the time. But then actually turning that into a behavior that is regularly in your life becomes the real challenge.
100%.
But this is
like
great.
Yeah, the behaviors in this field note too. Simple in concept, difficult to master, profound results.
Yes.
Any behavior would fall into that, right? Conceptually, they're mostly all very easy to understand, but they're really difficult to master in practice.
Right. So here's the problem. Like when we're explaining and justifying the need for a major change, we could either frame things in a negative, like if you're not thinking about your framing at all, that's problem number one. But then once you are thinking about what your framing is and how you come across, there's pros and cons for either framing it positively or negatively. What in your estimation, what are the best pros and cons to say about the positive framing? And then we'll talk about the negative one.
Well, I think the positive framing is one that many leaders lean into, especially if they're people who find themselves wanting to motivate. You want them to inspire. You want people to buy in really quickly. It's easier to lean towards that positive frame of this idea of optimism and a brighter future and what this could mean for long-term strategy, et cetera. So I actually find, and maybe that's just because that's where I lean naturally, but I do think that's more of a natural tendency. I'm a little more concerned if it's coming from a negative space. I often wonder, what does that say about the leader themselves? If everything is coming, well, we have to do this or else we're going to fall behind. Or we need to adapt this so that we don't lose this or that. It's an interesting one though, and particularly why I like this field note, because I think when you're able to balance both, it gives a really compelling argument for the change, more so than, hey, we should do this because this could be really great, or let's not do this, or we have to do this only because we're going to fall behind. When you can put the two together, really sandwich them, I think it makes for a much more compelling message. Obviously, that's what the field note's saying. I would like to think that more leaders over-index on the positive framing than the negative.
Right. Okay. So what is the advantage of going negative even at all? Because it seems as if most people would want to dismiss that.
I mean, the simplest form, it scares people into making the change.
That feels so manipulative. Yeah.
I hate to say that, but the reality is people make change out of fear all the time. Now, what the research would say is that when you make a quick change out of fear, it's actually not going to be a lasting change, that's not sustainable. But it is actually, when you need somebody to change and change quickly, fear-based motivation typically works in a short period of time, not for sustainable change. So I see why people do it, certainly.
Right. So Pascal in our comments has brought up a specific use case. So I was about to bring up a marketing use case to say, and I might still bring it up, but I think Pascal's in the comments is a good one. Layoffs and AI forced adoption have been two topics. where
Mhm.
you could either present it, it's change management. So let's start with layoffs, right? You're announcing layoffs. You can say it in a positive way or a negative way, in the way that you kind of explain it to the group, and even to the group that's leaving or to the group that is staying behind. And so, why would people want the negative frame in layoffs? Like, and it seems like you wouldn't want to do that, but there might be some advantages to saying, yeah, people sometimes choose just the negative frame. If we didn't do this, the entire business would go under, right? So we
Sure,
can't do
absolutely.
that, right? That's the negative frame.
That's a
But
negative frame. I think
yeah.
it's giving the I think the negative frame could also be a antidote for what are the negative implications that are gonna happen if we don't make this change,
Mhm.
right? You're painting a picture of reality of, here are the implications and the reason why we need to do it. Perhaps it's layoffs because of numbers, because of budget, because of who knows what. But we have to do it because of this. But also, here's
Mhm.
what this is going to mean in a positive framing. So I like, especially when it comes to layoffs, and AI was actually the exact example that came to mind with this one as well, because I think
Mm.
you hear it so often in one frame or the other,
Yes.
especially when people are adopting it in a professional setting. We hear so often, well, we have to do it or we're going to be behind the times.
Yes.
And then that's the message. Or it's the opposite of, we're going to do this. It's going to make us X, Y, and Z this much greater, more efficient, et cetera. You often see one extreme or the other with the AI integration that's happening pretty widespread now. That's immediately what I thought of with this one as well. I think the best leaders are integrating both, because there
Yeah.
are two sides to this AI story, almost inherently across the board, negative and positive.
Right. I should point out, because it comes up naturally here. We did an experiment on LinkedIn about
Mhm.
18 months ago, before we actually had a full campaign around our AI leadership coach, Alex. So we were wondering what the best kind of message would be responded to in the market. And so we set up a test on LinkedIn that only ran for a few weeks, as we were just trying to explore what are the messages that people are clicking on and indicating by their behavior that they are more interested. And so, as we looked at all of the messages, we probably developed about 30 messages,
Okay.
and they were broken up into 12 different groups, focusing on different people. And in the message categories, each one of those groups had 4 different messages, and one of those messages was always a negative framed message. And it
Hmm.
was a negative framed message, as in, you're not quite the leader that you meant to be, kind of feeling to it. Or, this is the thing that we're challenging about, like the scary part of leadership coming up. And so I can't recall the exact messages that we used, but in every case, all the way we looked through each one of those quadrants, people responded by clicking on the link more on the negative message than any of the positive message that we
Interesting.
tested out. So
Really?
it was kind of weird to see it come up. And
Yeah.
as I was looking at the data, I was like, I don't know that I want to be informed by this, because I don't necessarily want to create just the negative based marketing messages around everything that we do. But it was kind of unique when it was people who didn't have any context for who we were or what we were doing. It bears out in exactly what you said here earlier. The research says, while it might feel effective to begin with, over the long term, it won't necessarily create stickiness, right?
Mhm.
But in
Oh,
terms of
absolutely.
like creating the click on the ad, it was super effective on getting that click.
Interesting. Well, I almost wonder, and I didn't see any of this or know about this project at all. But what I almost wonder if it played a little bit to people's own insecurities, right?
Oh, definitely. Right.
Where they see something in the negative framing and go, "Oof, I'd love to get better there," right? Because
Yes.
we're quick to say, "Hey, how do I make myself better in this situation or this situation?" Versus, "I'm really great here." Right? It's just human nature. We're gonna fall. It's the
Right.
same reason why we always remember feedback. We could have 50 positive things, but one negative, and we're always going to remember the negative. I think naturally, as humans, our brains go to correcting and getting better and growing, which naturally leads itself to, what's the negative frame, or what do I need to change or implement and
Right.
do differently? Right?
Right.
We don't look at our positive attributes and go, "Ooh, I'm really good here. I'm going to get even better."
Yeah. Right. Right.
We read those and go, "Oh, yeah, I could use a little help here. I think this is where I'm going to double click."
All right.
Interesting.
So if we do have this paradox of trying to decide whether or not we're coming at it from a positive or negative point of view, what's the
Mhm.
effective thing that a lot of admired leaders do? Explain the third way to us, Megan.
Explain the third way. The third is the third way is to use them both in conjunction with each other. No?
Hmm. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Right.
Yeah, it's to use them in conjunction. You always want to be able to present both sides of it. And I think this is true for a lot of things. Again, as I said earlier, over indexing one or the other, I think tells us more about the leader than
Hmm.
anything else. When you're
Right.
able to present a holistic picture of, hey, we need to do this because there could be negative consequences. But on the flip side, here are the positive things that we see that it's going to affect the strategy and the goals, et cetera. You have a holistic picture that people can really grasp onto. Now, what's interesting is the audience is probably going to grasp onto one or the other. They're going to
Hmm.
jump onto the change from their own perspective, which could be from the negative frame or the positive frame. The beautiful thing is you don't need to know, right? That makes
Yes.
no difference. The reality is the best way to do this is to present both that positive and negative anytime you're going to make some kind of announcement.
Right. So aside from like official announcements, how to have this creep up in your day to day, like uh, just your normal way of dealing with it. Like and I think this is the indictment in the field note. When we're talking to our kids, when we're talking in casual conversation, we'll have the tendency to probably over-index on one or the other of these, and we're falling into a pitfall, right? So even outside of like when you're actually crafting the communication and typing the email out, this needs to be something that just becomes common for us to do, that we're not just being negative, but that we state the problem with the pivot as well.
Sure. I mean,
Um,
you could take it really simple. Think about when you need your kids to clean their room.
mhm,
What do we tell them? Clean your room.
right.
Why? Because I said so. Because it's dirty.
Your
Because it
your
smells.
room smells,
Your
right?
room smells, right? It looks disgusting, right? Those are negative framing.
Yes.
Clean your room. Why? Well, it's gonna smell better. It's gonna
Yeah.
look nicer. It creates a more peaceful environment because I said so, which could be a positive
Right.
frame also, right? We could do either of them. The reality is, you could do the same sandwich for a simple message like that. Hey,
Right.
your room is a mess. You need to pick it up. It's gonna smell better. You're gonna sleep better. You're gonna feel better when it's done. Now I put it in a
Right.
negative frame and a positive frame all in the same message. It can be done very simply for very simple messages. But again, most of us don't put thought behind how
Yes.
we frame message.
So, a few examples of the way it sounds in practice. Market
Mhm.
conditions are shifting against us, and waiting will only narrow our options. We're in control of our destiny, though, if we act now. Right. So that ends with some inspiration that says we've got some autonomy in this, even though it might be a scary thing that we're going into. And so there's a great example. Another one: our competitors are pulling ahead while we stand still. We are not powerless, though. We can take control and shape the outcome through decisive action. Um, so, but getting it to the point where like I'm thinking about this consistently so that it comes up naturally in the way that I would frame it in the hallways is really the important thing here, right? And
That's
that won't
exactly
happen, yeah, unless
that's
we
exactly
actually
right.
practice it.
That's that little part of this difficult to master, right? It's a simple
Mhm.
concept and we can riff on it back and forth for a few minutes. But when you're in a moment to actually pivot and think, okay, how do I want to do this? It does require a little bit of mastery, a little bit of practice, a little bit of forethought on can I put this in both a negative and positive frame so that it speaks to everyone, both out of the negative or fear, but also in the positive and optimistic side.
Right. So the way that the field note ends is with this short thing: name the risk, claim the future.
Mhm.
So that might be the thing that needs to rattle around in our head for the next few weeks as we try to put this into practice. Is that
100%. I think
that
that's a
little
great
thing?
reminder. Name the risk, claim the future. Name the risk, claim the future. Great way to always put it in a negative and a positive.
Right. Okay. So um,
So
I don't
name
want
the
it to
risk,
become
claim the future, Mikey.
yeah, I don't want it to become trite. I actually want this to be so, but I also want to actually do it. So maybe doing it in low stakes situations with your kids and the way you talk about their room is a better way to do it before you start like don't experiment with this in the hallways of your office. Find a way to do it in a low risk environment first,
Yeah.
right?
We would say that for any new behavior, try it in a risk-free environment as much as possible before you bring it into a professional setting. And those risk-free environments tend to be community-oriented, family-oriented, etc.
Right. Well, great. Not often do we have one that is so behavioral oriented in our field notes. Like a lot of times we're coming to this discussion and we can't like really dig into behavior stuff the way
Hmm.
that we like to. But I'm glad I was able to talk with you on this one, and thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
Bye, Nick.